The moment Zara walked into that conference room and saw him standing there, her stomach dropped. Not because he was handsome, though he was, annoyingly so, but because she recognized him. The sharp jaw, the way he stood with both hands planted flat on the table, like he owned every surface he touched. She'd know that posture anywhere. He was the man who had humiliated her in front of an entire room full of people 6 weeks ago. And now, apparently, he was the new lead architect on her firm's biggest project of the year. Zara pressed her folder against her chest and told herself to breathe. She was 29 years old. She had spent 4 years climbing from junior associate to senior project manager at Hargrove and Mills. She had survived a divorce, a cross-country move, and her mother's relentless commentary about all of the above. She could survive this. She took her seat at the far end of the table and did not look at him again. Let's go back 6 weeks. It was a Tuesday in October, and Zara had just had the kind of morning that makes a person question every single choice that led them to this point in their life. Her alarm hadn't gone off, or maybe it had and she'd slept straight through it, which felt worse somehow, like her body had just decided to give up without consulting her. She'd had exactly 12 minutes to shower, dress, and get out the door, and she'd spilled coffee on her coat on the way to the parking garage, which meant she arrived at the Henderson Group's regional conference looking like she'd survived a minor disaster. She was there to present a proposal, a big one. Zara had spent 3 weeks on that proposal. 3 weeks of late nights and takeout containers stacked by the trash, of spreadsheets open on 2 monitors, and her cat Butter walking across the keyboard and adding random letters to her cost projections. 3 weeks of calling her best friend Nadine at 11 p.m. to read sentences out loud and ask if they made sense. The Henderson pitch was supposed to be her moment, the thing that proved she was ready for the promotion she'd been asking about for 8 months. She found her seat in the second row and exhaled. And then the man in front of her, dark blazer, no tie, the kind of easy confidence that some people are just born with and the rest of the world finds deeply irritating, turned around and said, without preamble, without introduction, without any of the social grace a normal person would employ, "Excuse me, I think you're in the wrong seat." Zara looked at him. Then she looked at the laminated placard in front of her that said Rasab, Hargrove and Mills. "I'm pretty sure I'm not," she said. He glanced at the placard. He had the nerve to look only mildly inconvenienced. "The seating chart I was given puts the Hargrove team in row 3. And the seating chart I was given," she said, keeping her voice very pleasant, the way her mother had taught her to do when she actually wanted to say something else entirely, "puts me right here." He looked at her for a moment. Not rude, exactly. Just assessing. Like she was a detail in a blueprint that didn't quite fit. "There must have been a miscommunication," he said. "I'm with Whitmore Design. We specifically requested the second row for sightlines to the display screen." "Then I suggest you take that up with whoever organized this event," Zara said, "because I'm not moving." She turned to face the front of the room. Behind her, she heard him exhale. Not quite a sigh, but close. She heard him say something quiet to the man beside him. She didn't catch the words, but she caught the tone, and it made her jaw tighten. They sat through the first hour of presentations separated by approximately 4 feet, and a very charged silence. When Zara stood to deliver the Hargrove pitch, she was careful not to look in his direction. She delivered 32 minutes of the cleanest, most confident presentation she had ever given in her professional life, fueled entirely by spite, and it was the best she'd ever felt about a proposal. She thought that was the end of it. She thought she would never see him again. His name was Conrad. She learned this the day he walked into Hargrove and Mills as the lead design consultant on the Whitmore-Henderson collaboration project. The project that Zara, due to her Henderson pitch going extremely well, had just been assigned to manage. Her boss, Raymond, except no, Zara reminded herself to stop using names from her internal list. Her boss, David, told her the news on a Thursday morning, with the cheerful obliviousness of a man who had no idea he was delivering something that should have come with a warning label. "Big opportunity," David said. "Conrad Webb is one of the best structural design minds in the city. You two are going to do great work together, Conrad Webb." She went home that evening, sat on her kitchen floor with Butter in her lap, and called Nadine. "His name is Conrad," she said. "Is that bad? He's the seat guy." A pause. "The seat guy from the Henderson conference?" "Yes." "Oh," Nadine said, and then, "Well, maybe he doesn't remember you." He remembered her. She could tell the moment she walked into that first project meeting and he looked up from his laptop. Something flickered across his face, recognition, and then, to his credit, something that looked almost like discomfort. He hadn't expected this either. Good, she thought. He glanced at the meeting agenda. "Zara Ose, Mr. Webb," she said. and sat down and opened her folder and decided that they were going to be completely professional about this because she was not going to let a man who had once mildly annoyed her in a conference room derail the most important project of her career. For 3 weeks, they were professional. Not warm, not easy, but professional. They communicated primarily by email even when they were in the same building. They disagreed about the site phasing plan and the budget allocation for the Eastern Wing's facade and the timeline for the environmental review. And each disagreement was handled in meeting notes and action items, and the kind of language that is technically polite and emotionally arctic. Her friend Nadine called it corporate Cold War. Zara called it effective boundary setting. Her mother called it something else entirely when Zara mentioned it during their Sunday call. "You argued with a man at a conference over a chair," her mother Beverly said with the tone of a woman reviewing evidence. "Over my seat, my assigned seat, and now you work with him, temporarily, for one project." Beverly was quiet for a moment. The particular quality of that silence was familiar. It was the silence of a woman who was choosing her words with the care of someone diffusing something. "Your Aunt Gloria thinks you should try one of those apps," Beverly said. "Mom, I'm not saying that. I'm saying Gloria thinks that." "Then tell Aunt Gloria I'm busy. You're always busy." Another pause. "I ran into the Confer family at church last week." Zara knew exactly where this was going. "Mom, their son is in town. He works in finance. I have to go," Zara said. "I have a 7 a.m. site visit." She did not have a 7 a.m. site visit. She lay in bed and stared at the ceiling for a long time after she hung up, thinking about how she had not been on a date in 14 months, and how she was not sure if that was something she should feel bad about or not, and how the walls of her apartment sometimes felt very close at night when the city outside got quiet. She fell asleep thinking about the Eastern Wing's facade, and woke up thinking about it too, and told herself this was fine. This was what focus felt like. The shift happened on a Wednesday. They were the last 2 people in the office, or rather, in the project room Hargrove had set aside for the Henderson work. It was 7:30 in the evening, and they'd been there since 8 that morning, and the Henderson client had sent 3 rounds of revision requests that day alone, each one more structurally contradictory than the last. Zara was staring at the latest set of changes on her laptop and thinking, with remarkable clarity, that she was going to need to call the client and have a conversation that she was dreading. Conrad walked back in from wherever he'd gone, coffee apparently, because he set a cup down near her laptop without saying anything. She looked at it, then at him. "You look like you needed it," he said, and sat back down at his side of the table. It was such a small thing, such an ordinary, unremarkable thing. But she'd been sitting there for 11 hours and no one had brought her coffee since the morning intern left at 5. And she was tired in the bone-deep way that goes beyond sleep. And something about that cup just got to her. "Thank you," she said. "The client's comments on the Eastern facade are structurally incompatible with the load requirements," he said, not looking up from his screen. "I've been trying to find a way to make it work for 2 hours." "I know," she said. "I think we need to push back." "I know," she said again. "I've been drafting the email." He looked up then, and for the first time since they'd started working together, he looked at her not like she was an obstacle or a professional counterpart, but like she was just a person. Someone who'd also been here since 8 in the morning and was also tired. "Do you want me to look at it?" he asked. "Before you send." She turned the laptop toward him. He read it. He suggested 2 changes, both of them good, one of them better than what she'd written, which she acknowledged internally without pleasure. "It's good," he said, and pushed the laptop back. She sent the email. They worked in silence for another hour, but it was different silence. Something had gone out of the air. She didn't know what to call it exactly. The static, maybe. The held-breath quality of every interaction they'd had since he walked into that first meeting. At 8:45 he started packing up his bag. "For what it's worth," he said, not looking at her, I was wrong about the seating arrangement at the Henderson conference." She looked up. "I'd been told the wrong information," he said. "I didn't verify it before I said something. That was on me." He slung his bag over his shoulder and looked at her steadily. Zara had a choice in this moment. She could be gracious, she could be cool, or she could hold it a little longer the way she'd been holding it. "You were pretty certain," she said. "I was wrong to be," he said. She nodded once slowly. Okay, he said, and left. She sat in the empty project room for a while after that. Butter was going to be very annoyed about being fed late. The coffee Conrad had brought her was cold. Outside, the city made its nighttime sounds, and Zara thought, with some surprise, that she didn't feel quite so far away from other people as she had that morning. Her mother called on Sunday, and Zara braced herself for round 2 of the Okafor Sun. Instead, Beverly said, "How's the big project going?" Zara relaxed. "It's actually going better. The client is difficult, but the team is strong. And your colleague? The one you had the issue with?" Zara had made the mistake of telling her mother about Conrad 3 weeks ago when she needed to vent. She was still paying for this. "It's professional," Zara said. "It's fine, just fine." "I'm asking about a professional relationship." "Then yes, professional, fine." Beverly hummed, not satisfied. Mothers rarely were. What nobody tells you about working closely with someone you decided to dislike is that the decision doesn't hold up very well under prolonged exposure to evidence. Conrad Webb was thorough. He was honest. Sometimes more honest than was comfortable, but always without cruelty. He pushed back when he disagreed and changed his position when presented with better information, which, in Zara's experience, was rarer than it should be. He worked long hours without complaining about them. He brought coffee to the project room on Wednesdays, which had apparently become a thing. He was also, she started to notice, the kind of quiet that had something behind it. Not cold, not withholding, just private. The way some people are private not because they're hiding something, but because they've learned to take up only the space they're invited into. She didn't know where that observation came from. She pushed it back. But she caught herself, in week 5 of the project, looking forward to the Wednesday evenings. She caught herself actually laughing, a real laugh, surprised out of her, when he said something dry about the client's latest aesthetic note that was so precisely, accurately ridiculous that she nearly knocked over her water bottle. She caught herself telling Nadine, carefully, that he wasn't what she'd thought. "He's not what you thought," Nadine repeated. He's more straightforward than I realized. Less, I don't know. I misjudged him." Zara, "What? You like him?" "I work with him." Both things can be true. "Nadine, we almost had a public argument over a conference room chair. And now you're telling me he's thoughtful and honest and you accidentally laughed at his joke." A pause. "You like him." Zara looked out her apartment window. The city was orange and gray in the October evening, and Butter was sitting on the sill trying to commune with a pigeon. "I'm not doing anything about it," she said. "Obviously not," Nadine said. "You never do. There is a particular kind of hell that is being set up on a blind date by your mother, and Zara had managed to avoid it for 3 years through a combination of being busy and being firm, and occasionally pretending not to hear her phone. In November, she heard her phone. "I need you to do this for me," Beverly said, which was not technically a lie. Her mother always needed things, usually things Zara could not easily refuse. "I ran into Patricia. Do you remember Patricia Osi? From church? She has a son." "Mom, we went over this. Different son," Beverly said. "Not the finance one. The other one." A pause in which Zara could practically hear her mother readjusting. "He's an architect, actually." Zara said nothing. "I thought you might find that interesting," Beverly said with the studied casualness of a woman who had been thinking about this for weeks. "Mom, I work with architects. I don't need to date one." "You work with architects," Beverly agreed. "And how is that going?" The implication landed with the precision of a guided missile. "One dinner," Beverly said. "You can leave after the appetizers if you hate it. I just want to know you're—" She stopped. "What?" Zara asked. "I want to know you're not alone," Beverly said, and the way she said it, simply, without performance, made Zara's chest do something complicated. "Okay," Zara said. "One dinner." The restaurant her mother chose was in Midtown. Nice but not intimidating. The kind of place that had good lighting and a menu with options for people who didn't eat meat and a noise level that allowed for actual conversation, which Zara appreciated. She'd spent 20 minutes choosing what to wear and then felt annoyed at herself for caring. She arrived first. She was always early. She was looking at the menu when she heard the host say, "Your party is already here, right this way," and she looked up. And time did something strange for a moment. Not stopped exactly. More like, stuttered. Conrad Webb stood at the entrance to the dining room, with his coat over his arm, following the host, and then he saw her, and he also stopped moving. They looked at each other across 12 feet of white tablecloth and candlelight, and an absolutely catastrophic amount of coincidence. The host pulled out the chair across from her. Conrad sat down. Zara looked at the menu. Then she set it down. "Your mother is Patricia Webb," she said. "Patricia Osi Webb," he said. "She goes by both." A pause. "Your mother is Beverly Osi." "We're not actually related," Zara said. "Our families are from the same area of Ghana. Distant connection." "I know," he said. "My mother explained this to me on the drive here." He paused. "I didn't know your first name until right now." She thought about that. They had been colleagues for 6 weeks. Professional, cordial, sometimes even warm. She knew his professional history, his design sensibility, his opinion on load-bearing walls and unreasonable client requests. She had never once thought to wonder about his family. So, she said. So, he said. The waiter arrived and they both ordered water and something to do with their hands. And after he left, there was a moment where the situation could have collapsed into awkwardness or laughter. And it chose laughter. A small, real, helpless thing from both of them that dissolved the strangeness and left something easier in its place. Our mothers, Zara said. Our mothers, he agreed. Did you know she started? I didn't, he said. I would have warned you. She looked at him. Would you? He considered it honestly. Yes, he said. I think I would have wanted you to have the choice. And that was the thing about Conrad Webb, she thought. The thing she'd been cataloging without meaning to for 6 weeks. He meant what he said. There was no subtext, no angle. He just meant it. The conference, she said. That's where we really met. The conference, he said. Where I was wrong about the seating chart. You were very confident about it. I was wrong with a lot of confidence, he said. I've been working on that. She found herself smiling despite herself. How's that going? Slower than I'd like, he said. And he smiled back, and it changed his face in a way that she'd never seen before, in any meeting room or project planning session, and she thought, oh, that's something. They stayed through the appetizers. They stayed through the entrees. When the waiter asked about dessert, they both looked at each other with the slight surprise of people who had lost track of how much time had passed. And Conrad said, Do you want to? And Zara said, Yeah, I think I do. She didn't tell Nadine about the dinner for 2 days because she needed to understand it herself first. She didn't tell her mother anything for a week. Because if Beverly knew it went well, she would be insufferable in a way that was deeply loving and entirely overwhelming. And Zara was not ready for that. What she sat with in those days was something she hadn't felt in a long time, the clean, simple sense of wanting to see someone again. Not because she had to. Not because of a project or a meeting or a deadline. Just because she'd liked where the conversation went and wanted to find out where it would go next. Conrad texted her the day after the dinner. Not about the project, just I had a good evening. Thank you for staying. She read it twice. She wrote back, I did too, even considering the circumstances. He wrote, especially considering the circumstances. She put her phone down and picked up butter and sat with that for a moment. The project wrapped in January. The Henderson building broke ground in the spring. There's a photo from the ceremony. The kind they take for press releases and company newsletters. And if you know where to look, you can see Zara and Conrad standing near the back of the group, close enough that their shoulders almost touch. Her mother has this photo printed and framed. She has it on the sideboard in the living room, next to Zara's college graduation photo and a picture of Beverly's own wedding day. And she mentions it every single time Zara visits, with the satisfaction of a woman who planned something carefully and watched it land exactly right. Zara tells her it was a coincidence. 2 families, 1 church, 1 phone call, 1 dinner. Beverly smiles in the particular way of mothers who know better. What Zara knows is this. She and Conrad had their first real argument over a chair. They spent 6 weeks building something they didn't name. They met, without planning to, over candlelight and a menu they barely looked at, and found out that the person they'd been careful around was the person they'd been looking for. She knows that when he is working through a problem, he goes very quiet and taps his pen against his left palm, and that this used to bother her, and now she finds it steadying. She knows that he makes terrible tea but very good coffee, and that he will admit when he's wrong, which remains one of the rarest and most necessary things she has ever found in another person. She knows that some things that begin in friction don't stay that way, that first impressions are a draft, not a final version, that the seat you're given is not always the seat you'll end up in, and she knows that her mother, her relentless, loving, deeply aggravating mother Beverly, will be telling the story of how she put this together for the rest of her life. Zara has decided quietly that Beverly has earned it.